Assalamu alaikum. I'm Dr. Aisha. Today we're going to talk about deep fascia of leg, compartments of leg, and muscles in the anterior compartment of leg. So far we are done with the hip joint, with knee joint, thigh, and popliteal fossa. And today we are going to start a new topic, which is the leg. Our first topic for today is deep fascia of leg. What is leg? Leg is basically that part of the lower limb that lies between the knee joint and the ankle joint. In medical language, we do not term the whole lower limb as leg. Leg is only that part of lower limb that lies between the knee joint and ankle joint. Okay. Now, deep fascia of the leg. It is also known as crural fascia. It is continuous above with the fascia lata, which you already know is the deep fascia of the thigh, and is attached around the knee to the patella, patellar ligament, tuberosities, and condyles of the tibia. It is also attached to the head of fibula. Posteriorly, it forms the popliteal fascia covering the popliteal fossa. In the leg, it is thick in the proximal part of anterior aspect of the leg, where it forms part of the proximal attachments of underlying muscles. As we all know that tibia and fibula are partly subcutaneous, especially medial surface of tibia and medial and lateral malleolus. Over these subcutaneous areas, deep fascia of leg is replaced by, or you can say it blends with the periosteum covering these bones. Deep fascia of leg is very important because it forms various structures in the leg. It forms two intermuscular septa that divides the leg into three compartments. In addition to this, a broad transverse intermuscular septum divides the posterior compartment into two further compartments as superficial and deep groups. Around the ankle, this deep fascia is thickened to form two bands which are known as retinacula. They are named so because they retain the tendons in place on the front of ankle. On the front of ankle, these retinacula are superior and inferior extensor retinacula. Laterally, there are superior and inferior peroneal retinacula, and posteromedially, there is flexor retinaculum. We'll talk about these retinacula in detail later on. Now, we'll talk about compartments of the leg. This is an image showing a transverse section of the leg and compartments of leg. This is tibia, which is medial bone of the leg. This is medial border of medial surface of tibia, which is subcutaneous. This is fibula. This is interosseous membrane, which connects these two bones. The outermost layer is skin, then comes the superficial fascia, then deep fascia. As we have already discussed, this deep fascia of the leg, it runs deep into the leg and forms two intermuscular septa, anterior intermuscular septum and posterior intermuscular septum. Anterior intermuscular septum is attached to the anterior border of the fibula, and posterior intermuscular septum is attached to posterior border of fibula. In this way, leg is divided into three compartments. This blue colored compartment, which you can see here, is the anterior compartment of the leg, which is bounded anteriorly by skin and superficial fascia, posteriorly by interosseous membrane, medially by lateral border of the tibia or lateral surface of the tibia, and laterally by medial surface of fibula. This compartment is anterior compartment. Now, this green one is the lateral compartment of the leg, which lies between anterior and posterior intermuscular septa. This large compartment which you can see here is the posterior compartment of leg. This is the transverse intermuscular septum. This purple line which you can see here, this is transverse intermuscular septum, which is the deep fascia of the leg. It is formed by deep fascia of the leg, as I have already told you. This transverse septum divides the posterior compartment into two groups. This one is the superficial group of muscles and this one is deep group of muscles. Today we'll talk about muscles of the anterior compartment. This one. Now let's talk about muscles of the anterior compartment of leg. We have four muscles in the anterior compartment. The first muscle is tibialis anterior muscle. The second one is extensor digitorum longus muscle, which you can see here. The third one is extensor hallucis longus. The fourth muscle is fibularis tertius or peroneus tertius muscle. This peroneus tertius is a separated part of this extensor digitorum longus muscle. It is not always present. It is absent in about 10% of the population. All these muscles, they pass and are inserted anterior to the transversely oriented axis of ankle joint, as you can see here. So these muscles, they act as dorsiflexors of the ankle joint, elevating the forefoot and depressing the heel. Dorsiflexion, as you already know, is the action of raising the foot upwards towards the shin. It means flexion of foot in the dorsal upward direction. We'll talk about origin, insertion and action of these muscles individually. Let's begin with the tibialis anterior muscle. So the first muscle in this group is tibialis anterior muscle. It is the most medial and superficial dorsiflexor. It arises from the lateral condyle of the tibia, upper 2/3 of lateral surface of shaft of tibia and adjoining part of interosseous membrane. This muscle then passes down. Its tendon passes with its own synovial sheath deep to the superior and inferior extensor reticula and become inserted into the inframedial surface of medial cuneiform bone and adjoining part of base of first metatarsal bone. This is the medial cuneiform bone, which is the tarsal bone in the foot. As we have already discussed that there are 8 carpal bones in the hand which forms the wrist joint. Similarly, we have 7 tarsal bones in the foot. We'll talk about these bones in detail later on. For now, just remember their name and arrangement so that you can easily understand the attachment of the leg muscles. This is talus, this is calcaneum, this is navicular bone, this is cuboid, and these 3 small bones are cuneiform bones. This is medial cuneiform, this is intermediate, and this is lateral cuneiform bone. Tibialis anterior is inserted into inframedial surface of this medial cuneiform bone. These 5 bones which you can see here, these are metatarsal bones, and these distal bones are phalanges of the toes. We have 2 phalanges for the big toe and 3 phalanges for the lateral 4 toes. This is origin of tibialis anterior from the upper 2/3 of lateral surface of tibia, and this is insertion point of tibia. Now coming to the action of tibialis anterior. Tibialis anterior is a strong dorsiflexor of the foot. This is dorsiflexion of the foot. As you can see here, the upward movement of the dorsum of the foot. This is dorsiflexion, this is plantar flexion. Tibialis anterior is a strong dorsiflexor of foot. As the tendon of tibialis anterior, it crosses the ankle joint to be inserted into the medial side of foot. In doing so, its tendon is located farther from the axis of ankle joint, giving it the most mechanical advantage and making it the strongest dorsiflexor. In addition to this, tibialis anterior also acts as inverter of the foot, acting along with tibialis posterior muscle, which is antagonist to this muscle. When both these muscles contract together, they cause inversion of the foot. As you can see in this image, inversion is a movement in which the sole of the foot faces medially, and eversion is opposite to this movement. In eversion, sole of the foot faces outwards or laterally. So tibialis anterior is also inverter of the foot. In addition to this, it keeps the leg vertical while walking on uneven ground. It maintains the medial longitudinal arch of the foot. This is an image showing dorsiflexion of the foot. This is dorsiflexion, this is plantar flexion, and this is transversely oriented axis of ankle joint around which this movement occurs. And this is an image showing inversion of the foot. As you can see here, sole of the foot faces medially. Now let's talk about testing of tibialis anterior muscle. This is an image showing testing of tibialis anterior muscle. The person is asked to stand on his heels or dorsiflex the foot against resistance. As you can see here, if the tibialis anterior is acting normally, its tendon can be seen and palpated. The second way to test the tibialis anterior muscle is we ask the patient to invert his foot against resistance as is shown in this figure, and we can feel for the contracted muscle and tendon. If the muscle is acting normally, its tendon can be seen and palpated. Now the second muscle in this group is extensor digitorum longus muscle, which is the most lateral of anterior leg muscles. This green one is extensor digitorum longus muscle. As you can see in this image, a small part of the muscle, it arises from the lateral condyle of the tibia, whereas most of it arises from the whole upper 1/4 and anterior half of the middle 2/4 of medial surface of shaft of fibula. It arises from whole of the upper 1/4 and anterior half of middle 2/4 of medial surface of fibula. It also arises from the adjoining part of the interosseous membrane, just superior to the ankle joint. At this point, this muscle becomes tendinous. This divides into 4 tendons. As you can see here, these 4 tendons of extensor digitorum longus, they become inserted into the lateral 4 toes. 1, 2, 3 and 4. These are the 4 lateral toes into which the tendons of extensor digitorum longus muscle are inserted. This white band is superior extensor retinaculum and this is inferior extensor retinaculum. These are the tendons of extensor digitorum longus muscle. This is another image showing insertion of extensor digitorum longus muscle into the lateral 4 toes. These white tendons, these are tendons of extensor digitorum longus muscle. An important fact about its insertion is that each tendon of extensor digitorum longus muscle, it forms a thickening over the dorsum of proximal phalanx. This white thickening, which you can see here, is known as dorsal aponeurosis or dorsal digital expansion. This dorsal expansion, it further divides into three bands, a central band and two lateral bands. This central band, it becomes inserted into the base of middle phalanx, as you can see here, and the two lateral bands, they converge to become inserted into the base of distal phalanx. This is central band which is inserted into the base of middle phalanx, and these lateral bands, they converge and are inserted into base of distal phalanx. These tendons of extensor digitorum longus muscle and fibularis tertius, they share a common synovial sheath as they diverge on the dorsum of the foot and pass to their distal attachment. Another important fact about the tendon of extensor digitorum longus muscle is that extensor digitorum brevis muscle, which is a small muscle of the dorsum of foot, it becomes inserted into the lateral side of tendons of extensor digitorum longus muscle for the second, third and fourth toe. This white tendon, which you can see here, these tendons are extensor digitorum longus muscle. This brown muscle, which you can see here, is extensor digitorum brevis muscle. We'll talk about this muscle in detail in the dorsum of foot. For now, just remember, this is inserted into the lateral side of the tendons of extensor digitorum longus muscle for the second, third and fourth toe. This. Now talking about action of extensor digitorum longus muscle, it acts as a dorsiflexor at the ankle joint. It extends metatarsophalangeal joint, proximal and distal interphalangeal joints of the second to fifth toe. I repeat, it extends metatarsophalangeal joint and proximal and distal interphalangeal joints of the second, third, fourth and fifth toe. Now, how do we test the extensor digitorum longus muscle? We ask the person to dorsiflex his lateral four toes against resistance. If the muscle is acting normally, the tendons can be seen and palpated. These four small arrows which you can see here, they are indicating the tendons of extensor digitorum longus muscle, and this arrow is indicating peroneus tertius muscle. This one, we'll talk about this muscle in a while. This is extensor digitorum longus muscle, tendons of this muscle. Now the third muscle in this group is extensor hallucis longus muscle. This muscle, it lies deeply between tibialis anterior and extensor digitorum longus muscle at its superior attachment. It arises from the posterior half of middle 2/4 of the medial surface of shaft of fibula, just medial to extensor digitorum longus. This is origin point of extensor hallucis longus muscle from the middle 2/4 of medial surface of fibula. This muscle then passes downwards and rises to the surface in the distal third of the leg. Passing deep to the extensor retinaculum, it becomes inserted into the dorsal surface of base of distal phalanx of the big toe. This is big toe. This is inserted into the base of dorsum of distal phalanx of big toe. Coming to the actions of extensor hallucis longus muscle, like all other muscles of the anterior compartment, it also acts as a dorsiflexor of the foot at ankle joint and it extends metatarsophalangeal joint and interphalangeal joints of the big toe. Now, how do we test extensor hallucis longus muscle? This is an image showing testing of extensor hallucis longus muscle. We ask the patient to dorsiflex his great toe like this against resistance. If the muscle is acting normally, its entire tendon can be seen and palpated. As you can see here, this is the tendon of extensor hallucis longus muscle, which can be seen and palpated. Now the last muscle in this group is peroneus tertius muscle. This one, which is also known as fibularis tertius muscle. This peroneus tertius muscle is a separated part of extensor digitorum longus muscle and may be regarded as its fifth tendon. It is not always present. In about 10% of the population, this muscle is absent. It arises from the lower 1/4 of medial surface of shaft of fibula. As you can see here, this lower 1/4 of medial surface of shaft of fibula, it gives origin to the peroneus tertius muscle. Proximally, attachments and fleshy parts of extensor digitorum longus muscle and fibularis tertius are continuous. However, distally, fibularis tertius tendon is separate, as you can see here, and it becomes inserted into the medial part of dorsal surface of base of fifth metatarsal bone. This is fifth metatarsal bone into the medial part of dorsal surface of base of metatarsal bone. At this point, fibularis tertius muscle is inserted. Here is another image showing origin and insertion of fibularis tertius muscle. This is lower 1/4 of the medial surface of fibula. This is fifth metatarsal bone. You can see here the tendon of fibularis tertius is inserted into medial part of base of fifth metatarsal bone. Now coming to its action, this muscle also acts as a dorsiflexor at the ankle joint. It also acts at the subtalar and transverse tarsal joints here, contributing to eversion of the foot. In addition to this, it may play a special proprioceptive role in sensing sudden inversion and then contracting reflexively to protect the anterior tibiofibular ligament. Now let's talk about the nerve supply of anterior leg muscles. This is the common fibular nerve, which is also known as peroneal nerve. This peroneal nerve, it divides into a superficial branch and a deep branch. This is superficial peroneal nerve. This is deep peroneal nerve or deep fibular nerve. This deep peroneal nerve, it gives branches to all the anterior leg muscles. As you can see here, it supplies tibialis anterior muscle, extensor digitorum longus, extensor hallucis longus, and peroneus tertius muscle. We'll talk about these nerves in detail in our next lecture. That's all about origin and insertion and action of these muscles. Now we'll talk about anterior compartment syndrome of leg. What is a compartment syndrome? It occurs when tissue pressure within a given compartment exceeds the perfusion pressure of arterial supply, or you can say increased pressure within a compartment. It leads to compression of arteries, resulting in ischemia to the muscles and nerves of the compartment. As you can see in this picture, the swollen muscles, which are increasing the pressure in this compartment, they are compressing the arteries of the compartment, which leads to ischemia of the muscles and nerves of the compartment. Now, what could be the reasons or conditions which lead to compartment syndrome? There might be acute causes or chronic causes. Acute causes include the fracture of tibia and fibula that causes significant bleeding in one or more compartments of the leg. This uncontrolled bleeding increases the pressure within the compartment. Or the second important cause which can lead to the compartment syndrome is infection or inflammation within the compartment, which leads to pus formation and increases the pressure. The third condition which leads to this disease or syndrome is burns or snake bite. In addition to this, there may be a chronic condition which leads to this compartment syndrome, which is overuse or excessive exercise where repetitive motion and muscle use cause localized swelling and irritation. This condition is also known as shin splint. As we know, the facial compartments of the lower limbs are generally closed spaces ending proximally and distally at the joints. Because the intermuscular septa and deep fascia of the leg forming the boundaries of leg compartments are strong, the increased volume consequent to infection increases the intracompartmental pressure. Inflammation within the anterior and posterior compartments of the leg spread in a distal direction. However, infection in the lateral compartment of the leg can ascend proximally into the popliteal fossa. What are the signs and symptoms of anterior compartment syndrome? The 5 characteristic signs of this syndrome are 5 P's, that is pain in the anterior leg, pale skin tone due to ischemia of the muscles and skin, paresthesia due to paralysis of the nerves, pulselessness and paralysis of muscles. These are the 5 symptoms which result due to increased pressure in the compartment, which leads to compression of arteries and nerves. Now, what is the treatment of this syndrome? We do fasciotomy, which means incision of the fascia, as you can see in this image. This fasciotomy is done to release the pressure within the anterior compartment, and then the underlying cause is treated. That's all about the compartment syndrome. The second important condition related to the anterior leg muscles is the shin splints. Shin splints are edema and pain in the area of distal 2/3 of the tibia, resulting from repetitive microtrauma of the tibialis anterior muscle. As we know, tibia is also known as the shin bone. Shin splints are not only because of injury to the tibialis anterior muscle, but they could be due to repetitive injury to tibialis posterior muscle also. This is the site of the tibia bone. We know tibialis anterior muscle, it lies on the lateral surface of this bone, and tibialis posterior muscle, it lies on the posteromedial side of this bone. So these are the sites of edema and pain due to injury to these muscles. These are basically sites of shin splints. Shin splints are basically a combination of small tears in muscle as it attaches to the tibia and inflammation along periosteum of the tibia. What are the causes of shin splints? Shin splints are a mild form of anterior compartment syndrome They commonly occur during traumatic injury or athletic overexertion of muscles in anterior compartment, especially tibialis anterior, by untrained persons. It may also occur in trained runners who do not warm up or cool down sufficiently. Now, what are the symptoms of shin splint? This overuse injury, it leads to swelling of the muscles in anterior compartment. Due to this edema and inflammation, blood flow to the muscles is reduced and muscles become painful and tender to pressure. How do we treat the shin splints? In mild cases, it can be treated by adequate rest, by ice packs, by using painkillers, flexibility exercises, and supportive shoes. Wearing supportive shoes with good cushioning during daily activities will reduce stress in your shins. That's all about anterior leg muscles and their clinicals. Thank you.